chat. Thank you. Now then, Jacob, quarterback quandaries and quarrels and mishaps and issues and last week's performance. How did you guys feel coming out of last week with your guys' quarterback?
I mean, I was honestly pretty optimistic. I think, Gunnell did a really good job last week. I thought he, played a really good game. He threw that interception on the very first drive. He completely missed Jamari Joyner on that in route. That would have been the first down, but, he airmailed it and it found a USC defender, and then they scored like a minute later. But I don't know. Honestly, other than that, I thought he settled in really well and really played a good game. He was going through his reads, he was progressing through them and utilizing the check downs and the flats, and it was just awesome to see how, efficient that offense actually really was, especially compared to last year. We were seeing that offense, either if the first read wasn't open, they were just bombing it 30, 40 yards down the field and hoping somebody was going to catch it. Like that offense just was not the same as it is this year. And so last week, just watching that offense really, utilizing the check downs and going through the reads. And, that one play where Jamari Joyner caught that touchdown, that was a little 5-yard drag route that he took 30 yards into the end zone. Like that play wasn't intended for Jamari Joyner. He was like the third read in that play. And, he just dumped it off into the flats and, gave the ball to his playmakers to make a play. So I thought he did really well last week, and I'm expecting the same thing this weekend.
I mean, yeah, looking at his stats here, the 24 for 36, 286 yards, like you said, one interception, but I mean, that's easily outweighed by the 3 touchdowns he threw. I couldn't help, but I don't know how much you've been watching Dylan Morris, our redshirt freshman quarterback, but I've been drawing some really interesting parallels. I mean, you see it 24 for 36 with Gunnell, 14 for 24 with Morris, obviously his first game in college, and it's to be expected to be a little low. 286 yards to 141. I mean, 0 TDs, 0 interceptions for Morris. But the rushing is looking really similar. I mean, 3.1 yard average attempts for Gunnell, 5.3. But again, he only had 4 attempts for Morris, so that number's a little inflated. But I can't help but feeling that Morris might be a younger, perhaps a higher skill ceiling version of Gunnell. With that being said, I think the same issues are kind of at stake here, where sometimes you get those airy balls. We saw that last week with the Huskies with Morris. I mean, again, his first game, but I mean, some of those balls were spot on. And then others were like, why did you throw it there? I mean, like a kid who's been playing, who maybe doesn't watch football at all, could have accurately put that a little better. How do you feel with accuracy and kind of this, with a 7-game season approaching mid-season? How do you feel about that kind of mid-season form with Gunnell versus Morris heading into this your guys' away game this weekend?
I mean, I don't know. Maybe it will be a little bit biased here, but I think Gunnell kind of has the edge on Dylan Morris just because we've seen Gunnell last year, and he's proven that he can run the offense. I think he threw 9 touchdowns to 1 interception last year. So I mean, he proved that he can not only run the offense but limit turnovers as well. Only throwing 1 pick that whole season last year. In limited playing time, of course. I think he only played 5 or 6 games. He didn't play the whole season, but you get my point. I mean, he proved to us last year that he can run this offense, and I don't think we've really seen a whole lot of Dylan Morris. And he didn't really have to do a whole lot last week just because that run game was so efficient. So I don't know. I think if you're comparing the two and you want to see who has the edge right now, I think you have to give it to Gunnell. But I wouldn't sleep on Dylan Morris too. I mean, he had a couple of rushing attempts. They looked solid with scrambling, but in terms of just throwing the ball, we haven't really seen him do that yet. And in his first season, of course, and just that first game, anything. So I don't know. I think the jury's still out on Dylan Morris, but I think he's got some upside for sure.
Yeah, biased or not, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, Morris just hasn't played enough for anyone to make a reasonable or even educated opinion on him, I feel like. One thing I would be worried about as an Arizona fan is the speed at which your offense gets to a start, and how a lot of that I feel like is run by a quarterback and setting tempo. And your guys I mean, obviously both teams having a terrible first drive in our games last week, but how do you feel like that's been addressed in press conferences with your coaches and talks with the quarterback or anything on the team at all, in terms of like picking up tempo and getting drives started sooner rather than waiting through? I mean, when I was watching, I'd say halfway through the second drive, maybe started the third, you guys started looking like you were getting in your groove. Like, have you seen anything or heard anything about that getting fixed up or picked up on?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just tough because, last week was, Arizona's first game, and it was the same for Washington. But, I mean, I think it's always kind of hard for a new offense to kind of get going right away. I mean, new quarterback, new starting running back, a bunch of new wide receivers, and, it not, I guess, kind of a new scheme as well, because, Khalil Tate and the plays that they used to call for him are almost exactly opposite of what they were trying to call for Ganell. So, last year it was a lot of RPOs. It was a lot of, deep balls, a lot of, run plays for Tate. We don't see that anymore with Ganell. So, it was an entirely new offense for the most part, I would say. A lot of new personnel. So I can't really fault them for getting off to a slow start. And they still ended up putting 30 points up on the board at the end of the game. So I thought the offense looked really good last week. So although it kind of, started off slow and it took a drive or two to get going, I don't know. I'm still really optimistic about this offensive group. I think they got a lot of really good talent on that side of the ball. I think the scheme that they're trying to run now with, just a high tempo, taking the yards that are given to them, not necessarily, chucking the ball 20, 30 yards down the field every play. A lot of, 4-yard, 5-yard dump routes, a couple of run plays in there. I like the momentum and kind of the groove that the offense has. And I'm still pretty optimistic. But yeah, I mean, you obviously want to get going early. That's, especially with a struggling defense. You never want to have your defense go out there on the first drive and they're already, down 7-0, right? Or like you want to give them a lead when the defense comes back out there. So, obviously you want them to kind of start the game off right. But I mean, as long as you're still putting up 30 plus points, I think Arizona has a good chance of winning any game when an offense scores 30 points, regardless of when they start to actually start scoring the points.
Yeah, I mean, you were talking about wanting to have your defense like have the lead as they start their defensive drives and stuff. And I mean, you guys have great receivers and people with like phenomenal receptions from last week. Barry Hill, Cunningham, Brightwell, Joyner had some really good receptions as well, like you said. Heading into this week against UW's secondary, what's been touted, I think, around the league, I think I'd be safely saying that we might have the best secondary, if not second best secondary in the league right now. How do you feel that shift coming out of the game against USC, where maybe it might be a weaker team, and I think we might be a little weaker than USC right now, but having such a much stronger secondary? Do you see that game plan changing? What do you expect the coaches to make in terms of decisions with the QBs?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be interested to see who Trent McDuffie ends up lining up against because I think whoever's going to be on him is pretty much going to lock that wide receiver down. He's a great corner. We saw Booby Curry kind of get shut down by Chris Steele pretty much the whole game last week. So, I think, depending on what kind of scheme that they decide to run, whether or not they play sides, I don't know if, Washington's defense plays sides on corners or if they man guys up. But I don't know. We'll see. But I think Arizona's got a lot of different weapons. We saw Booby Curry pretty much get shut out of the game, and there were still other guys to pick up the slack. Jamari Joyner was still making plays. Tavion Cunningham had that big catch. Stanley Berryhill, and they're getting Brian Castile back this week as well. So that's a really deep wide receiver core. So that's a good secondary. I agree. They've always had a good secondary. I feel like it's DBU over there at Washington. But, I don't know. I'm confident in Arizona's wide receiver core. I think there's a lot of them, too, where if one of them gets shut out, there's going to be 2, 3, 4 other guys that are going to pick up the slack. But that's definitely going to be an interesting matchup. But I'll be watching for Trent McDuffie and seeing where he lines up.
Yeah, I mean, speaking about matchups, one of